Mm. One second, sorry. Hey people, what's up? Ladies and gentlemen, I am here tonight with another live stream. We're gonna keep it pretty chill. I titled this live stream Books, Basketball, and Breaking Bad because that's what we're gonna be talking about today. I hope you guys can hear me all right. I'm currently live streaming on my phone for well, my computer's not working as well as it should. Let's just say it that way. I'm gonna start off by recommending a couple books, and in between, I'll answer some NBA question. So I'm gonna start off with an NBA book, one that I read 3 years ago when it first came out. Why can't I find it? Is it not here? Oh, I put it somewhere else. No matter. I'll recommend this one first. Well, I get a surprising amount of recommendations for books. Most people seem to want to know about. Most people seem to want to know about basketball statistics, books written about stats. I have a couple of them up there. Not a ton of them I would recommend in this video, but this one I think is suitable for every NBA fan. If you follow this guy on Twitter, you've probably heard of this book before, but it's excellent. It's very easy to read. It's very funny. It's like very random NBA stuff. There's a lot of really cool illustrations here in the book. And I just think it's great. I don't know how else to say it. And it's very accessible. It's for casual fans and hardcore fans alike. But I think that's excellent. Okay, I'm going to answer an NBA question. No, I have not read Ray Allen's book. I heard about it come out a couple months ago, or maybe it was last year. I don't know if I'm going to ever get around to reading that. I'm not that interested in Ray Allen's career. From what I understand, the most interesting part about Ray Allen's book is when he talks about the aftermath of him leaving the Celtics for the Miami Heat, which is, a reason why Ray Allen is not welcome back at those 2008 Celtic championship reunion meets, which is, I think it's a little petty, but yeah. You can get this book on Amazon. I'm sure you can find it on other places too, but yeah, this is excellent. I'm going to recommend, next I'm going to talk about a novel. This one I read fairly recently, a couple months ago. It's a Stephen King book, The Dead Zone. Really cool. The primary topic or hook for this book is you have a guy who, through some supernatural event, can basically tell the future. And he has these glimpses of the future of whatever person he touches. And one day he touches the arm of this politician, and he sees essentially World War III. He sees that this politician is going to cause World War III. And so a big question that this asks towards the end of the book is it moral for this person to assassinate someone in fear of what that person will do in the future if he doesn't die? And it's just an excellent book, excellent characters, as with all Stephen King novels. But this is my intro to Stephen King, so I haven't read a ton of his stuff, but so far so good. I really like that one. Talk about DeMarcus Cousins. Yes, I'll talk about DeMarcus Cousins. I promise you guys, I'll basically interlace these with books and basketball, and maybe a little bit of Breaking Bad. If any of you guys have Breaking Bad questions, I'd love to talk about that. To be honest with you, I mostly put Breaking Bad in the title because of alliteration, because books, basketball, and Breaking Bad sounds really cool. But anyways, yes, let's talk about DeMarcus Cousins. ACL tear, am I right? That will put him out through the vast majority of the regular season, if not the entire one. That combined with his Achilles injury, yeah, it's pretty tough, man. I mean, I think as a Lakers fan, I wouldn't be too worried. First off, because I think the Lakers actually are pretty deep at that position. Between JaVale McGee and Anthony Davis, they have more than 48 minutes of center time. They can split between the two of them. So it's not actually that big of a deal. I mean, you know, uh, part of the wish is that you wanted to see if DeMarcus Cousins could maybe get back to where he was, and to see how he could get back. You know, just how far he could take it. And without DeMarcus Cousins, they have a lower ceiling now. But for the Lakers, I'm not that concerned. And yeah, you feel bad for DeMarcus Cousins, but you know, that's that. This must be a little bit weird. I'm trying to scroll through the live comment section. It's my massive finger just dialing this. 1 second. Do I watch Stranger Things? No, I don't watch Stranger Things. That is definitely on my to-watch list. Definitely on my to-watch list. I should get around to that. I'm currently slugging my way through, I'm blanking, Death Note. It's the anime. It's the very old anime. You can tell it's old by the way it looks, but I'm watching Death Note on Netflix because per the recommendation of a friend. And I think I'm only 2 episodes in. It's a pretty interesting concept, but it's really long too. I think there's 40 episodes. Favorite Breaking Bad character? Wow, that's tough, man. Breaking Bad is one of those shows where it's like every character is so good on that show. Every character, even the minor characters in Breaking Bad, have so much have depth and layers. Like, if you think about one of the minor characters like Ted Beneke, right? Who I think on an average show, Ted Beneke would just be like the handsome romantic interest for Skylar to potentially cheat on Walt with. But in the show, he's given so much more depth. You see how he has these insecurities about retaining his father's company. So, I mean, that's an impossible question for me to answer. The better question would be, are there any characters on Breaking Bad that I don't like? And I would say the only one that I didn't like was Tuco Salamanca, just because I felt like it was too cartoony how evil he was and how crazy he was. Like, he didn't feel as believable to me. It's hard for me. I guess you chalk it off to some sort of mental illness, but he just didn't seem like a real person. Like, who actually acts that way? You know what I mean? But anyways. Have I ever watched Avatar: The Last Airbender? Yes, I did. In fact, I did not watch Avatar growing up because I, spent had the latter half of my childhood grew up in China, and that's when Avatar came out, and I never really got into it. But I did rewatch it because I like fantasy in general, and I mean, for a kids show, it's awesome. I think like me watching it right now as like a 20-year-old, it's like there's a lot of moments that are supposed to be funny that you just don't find funny when you get older. There's also a lot of moments that are too cheesy, that are like just too childish. But for a kids show, it's amazing, and for the time, the animation was pretty cool. It's very imaginative. I love how the creators of the show drew a lot of culture from Asia and Native America. I thought that was really, really cool. Everywhere from like the clothing to the way the characters looked. I thought that was really cool. Like, for example, I think it was Fire Nation in Avatar: The Last Airbender is basically like Imperial Japan. Imperial Japan in like the late 1800s or like 1700s. And like the Earth Kingdom is very loosely based off of like ancient China and ancient Chinese dynasties. So, and like the water tribes are basically like very close, like the what are they called? Native Alaskan tribes. But yeah, I thought it was cool. Game of Thrones. Yes, I have watched Game of Thrones as well. I think Game of Thrones is awesome. Last season was pretty terrible. I don't know anyone who thinks that last season was good. I have not gotten into the books yet. It's definitely on my list. The thing with me is that I have so many books on my to-read list that it doesn't make sense for me to start a series that is not finished yet. There's so many series that are completed that are on my reading list that I'm probably going to try to get through them before I ever get through Game of Thrones. Maybe when The Winds of Winter come out, maybe then I'll start watching, I'll start reading the Game of Thrones books. But right now I have too much. Okay, I'm going to recommend another book. Let's let's see, what do we do next? Oh, let's just do this one. This is very fun and simple. Some of you guys might have read this in high school. I don't know if this is the type of stuff that might be assigned reading, but Animal Farm. I think 1984 is probably what they would assign in high schools, but Animal Farm is my favorite George Orwell book. I like it more than 1984. It's shorter. It's written in, well, I mean, George Orwell writes in pretty simple language, but I just love this book, man. It's like, it's so simple and it's so short, but it's so impactful. Like the ending was, man, I just love this book. It's so perfect. I mean, just the way you can write a story in so few words is incredible. This is less than 100 pages. I don't know. Amazing. Okay, let's talk about an NBA stuff, just so I don't bore too many people who are into stuff. Let's see. Opinion on Elfrid Payton. Wow, I don't know if I have any strong opinions on Elfrid Payton. Let's see. Well, he's on the Knicks, right? You know, I mean, at this point, like Elfrid Payton is very low tier starter material. Maybe like, you know, he's pretty good for a backup point guard and pretty bad for a starter guard. I think that's the way you can put it. I think it's too late for him to really fulfill his all-star potential at all. I don't really see that anymore for him. You know, I think yeah, I don't know. I don't have a lot of stuff to say about Elfrid Payton. I have not seen Malcolm in the Middle. That's the show that Bryan Cranston was on. Yeah, I mean, I've heard about it, but only because of Breaking Bad. No, I haven't seen it. Is Jeremy Grant to the Nuggets getting overlooked? I feel like he's a perfect fit for that team. Yeah, I would say that, you know, it's a good move. I mean, like for what the Nuggets gave to the Thunder, it's totally good. And you know, especially with Paul Millsap is going to continue to decline next year, and even last year, like Paul Millsap's role already regressed by a lot, and so Jeremy Grant's going to get a lot of playing time. The thing with the Nuggets, what they really need is like a bigger but not too big 3-and-D small forward wing. That's like what they need. Like what the Nuggets need right now is like Trevor Ariza is like the type of player they need, you know? Because you know their backcourt is pretty stacked. They have, you know, Jamal Murray and Gary Harris is a top 10 NBA backcourts, and they're Monte Morris and I'm blanking. Who's the other guy in their backcourt? Monte Morris and who am I thinking of? Malik Beasley. Thank you. No, not Malik Beasley. No, the other guy. The other guy, not Monte Morris. God, I can't think of his name. No, not Will Barton. No, not Torrey Craig. The oh God, the who's the backup? No. Wait, nobody can tell me. Do I have to look this up myself? Whatever. It's okay. Whatever. Anyways, yeah, that's the Nuggets' weakness, really. Prediction on the Suns this year. The Suns will be better, you know, with Ricky Rubio. They'll be better. I don't really see them as a playoff. I don't give them any chance to make the playoffs. The West is so competitive, man. I went through this in my last stream, live stream, but the West is so competitive. There's basically 7 teams that are shoo-ins for the playoffs, and you have about like 5 teams fighting for that last 8th spot in the West, which includes the Sacramento Kings, Dallas Mavericks, San Antonio Spurs, and I don't see how the Suns can be better than any one of them. I mean, for the Suns, the big question they need to answer is what they're going to do with DeAndre Ayton, because it definitely feels like they're not using him properly, or that DeAndre Ayton, if you look at the Suns roster, DeAndre Ayton is the guy on this team that can really take them to another step. And so, you know, if you're him, you got to bet on him. You got to bet that he gets there. Okay, let's shift back to books. What else we got here? Oh, I'm gonna recommend two books that are a little bit depressing. I actually don't find them depressing, but they're written by people with terminal illnesses. So they're books about mortality. The first one's actually called Mortality. It's by Christopher Hitchens. Christopher Hitchens is mostly known as like a what do you call it? A public atheist. He writes a lot of books on religion, but I personally really like his writing in general, not just on religion, and it's really funny. He has a very dark sense of humor, and he's very sarcastic, and he's very well, he's English, so you know he's got like that sort of weird English humor. So I think that's really good. This one is also really good. When Breath Becomes Air. This is about a doctor who finds out that he has not cancer. Was it cancer? I believe. Yes, cancer. He has lung cancer. I guess that's kind of related to Breaking Bad, right? Except instead of making meth, this guy wrote a Pulitzer-winning book. So, 1 second, I gotta charge my phone. Okay, charge the book. Oh, Jesus. Okay, let's see if I. Okay. Whoa. Okay, that just cut off for a second. Hope that wasn't too confusing. Yeah, sorry guys. I'm just I'm streaming on my phone right now, so that's why it's a little bit confusing. What was I talking about? Yes, this book is really good. Pulitzer Prize winning. Yeah, definitely recommend it. If you're not doing too well mentally, I don't recommend reading books about terminal illness. But otherwise, I think it's existential stuff. Really, really good. Phone streaming is not good. Yeah, well. One Shot by Lee Child. I have not read. I actually have one Lee Child book on my bookshelf. Oh, I can reach it. Here we go. I have this one. It's the first Jack Reacher novel, Killing Floor. I bought this in a used bookstore, so this is on my reading list. From what I understand, he writes like, John Grisham, Dan Brown type thrillers. So, not my favorite genre, but I give every author a try. Pascal Siakam's stats prediction. Well, he's gonna be better than next year. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Pascal Siakam. Again, as I will say till the end of the day, one of my proudest moments as a semi-public NBA commentating figure is I predicted Pascal Siakam's All-Star rise way before he was actually good. So yeah, I think he's awesome. He's gonna have plenty of opportunities. We'll see, man. We'll see. I mean, he's almost a guaranteed All-Star shoo-in, but we'll see if he can take it beyond that step. I mean, for him, the shooting is a little bit concerning for me, right? Like during the playoffs. If you guys remember last year during the playoffs, I think especially against the Sixers and even against the Warriors, Pascal Siakam struggled a lot to hit wide open threes, and that was kind of concerning to me. But yeah, we'll see. If he improves that, then he's on, man. He can take it beyond All-Star level. Is Miles Turner better than Andre Drummond? I would certainly think so, man. And I don't even think it's debatable. I mean, I think I've said before that Andre Drummond is overrated, quite frankly. I think a lot of his rebounds are stat padded. His defense has been pretty awful continually throughout most of his career, despite the fact that he has the ability to be much better defensively. I feel like he's not. He doesn't provide anything off the court. I haven't heard any stories of him being a great locker room guy. If anything, he seems pretty childish from a lot of the answers that he gives sometimes. So I'm just not a fan, and I think he's overpaid too. He's he makes like $25 million per year. Yeah. I should also say I think players like Andre Drummond are replaceable. That's another big element. Like with a player like Andre Drummond, you can replace him with centers that make $10 million per year, and you don't lose $50 million worth of value. Favorite movie? I don't really have a favorite movie. I'm not a big movie guy, unfortunately. Definitely more of a books guy. Can anyone guess the ethnicity of this Asian? Well, you can Google my last name, and at least the way my last name is spelled, Jiang, there's only one ethnicity in the world that I believe really has that last name. I think they're Koreans with the last name of Jian, but I think they spell it differently. They would spell it Jung. That's my understanding. Yeah. Favorite artist. My favorite. I'm not a big music guy either, but my favorite artist is probably Eminem. Yeah, definitely Eminem. I mean, this has a lot to do with just like it's you guys know how like when like little chicks hatch out of their eggs, that they kind of imprint on the first human being that comes close to them. Well, that's basically what I did with Eminem. It was like, I was in maybe sixth grade, and I was just starting to listen. I was in China, and I was just getting back into American culture, or just, getting into American music. And Eminem was just one of the guys that helped me do that. I mean, that was the year that he released the Recovery album, which, and that was like very successful, and he was on all the charts. So I mean, it was just that, and from then onwards, you go back and listen to an artist's old stuff, and yeah, it's got to be Eminem. And I'm not, I'm not the type of guy to like make arguments that he's the best of all time, or that like he sucks, or that whatever. I mean, it's music. It's like it's so subjective. Music is even so much more subjective than sports. And even on matters of sports, there are still opinions that people can have, right? So I don't particularly care for making music arguments. Which part of China am I from? I am, I was born in Shanghai, which is either the biggest or the second biggest city in China, depending on how you define it. I was born in Shanghai, but neither of my parents are from Shanghai. My mom is from Jilin, which is a province in northern China, in Manchuria. It's she lives like, it's like right, it's very close to North Korea. Actually, it's basically one river away from North Korea. Not the city she lives in, but the province she lives in is that much in the north. And my dad is also from northern China, but not as far north. He's from Shandong, which is central north-ish China. Well, actually, no, central's not right. He's center north China, also by the sea. And yeah, and they went to college they met in college in Shanghai. I do speak Chinese and Mandarin. I owe that to the fact that I spent the latter half of my childhood growing up there. So, I don't know who Samantha is, so you're gonna have to clue me in. Have I read Thinking Basketball? Yes, I have. The book by Ben Taylor. Ben Taylor is also he makes YouTube videos. He started pretty recently. His channel's done really well, and I'm really happy for him. He makes excellent content. He makes the type of content that I wish I could make, in all honesty. I think I also recommended his book once in one of my videos before. I think it was the Will Chamberlain video. If you go to my channel, if you haven't watched that, go to my channel and you search up the Chamberlain paradox. I talk about, I based that video upon a thought experiment that he proposes in his book, Thinking Basketball. I think I have it on my shelf. Do I? Oh. Where is it? Oh, it's right there. Let me grab it. Yeah, right here, Thinking Basketball. Yeah, it's excellent. It was written in 2014, so it's a little bit outdated. But you also see how he predicted a lot of trends in very modern day basketball. But I think it's awesome, man. It's a great book, and it's a pretty short read. So if you want a good basketball book, Thinking Basketball, or if you're not sure you want to buy the book, just go watch this guy's YouTube videos. You have that too. All right, let's back. All right, since we're on the topic of books, I'm going to recommend some more books. I have just a stack here that I wanted to talk about. What else? Okay, now this one is probably my favorite sports book of all time, The Sports Gene. I read this when I was in high school, which was, I think I read this maybe junior year of high school, which would be 5 years ago. excellent book. I mean, I think it is a must read for every sports fans. I mean, I bookmarked a couple of very interesting passages that I think are just fascinating, man. So, this is called The Sports Gene, and it's basically about why certain athletes are more genetically gifted than others, and how much genetics or how much nature plays into this kind of stuff in the first place. And so, if you've ever wondered, how much does height really matter in the NBA? In what sports does wingspan matter the most? He answers a lot of those questions. He also talks about how in sports media, for instance, we often actually don't give enough credit, or we don't talk enough about just how athletically gifted certain players are. So he talks about this, for example, right? He says this is on page 283. I'm going to read this to you. There was a Sports Illustrated story called "The Fire Inside." Bulls center Joakim Noah doesn't have the talent of his NBA brethren, but he brings to the game an equally powerful gift. So he talks about how basically in the year 2013, I believe, there was a Sports Illustrated story about Joakim Noah, and how Joakim Noah is not that gifted or not that talented, but I think he had that one year where he was like all NBA, and he said Joakim Noah is in the NBA and he's this good because he's such a hard player. He actually does not have a lot of talent. And basically what the author points out in this video is that Joakim Noah is 6'11". He is the son of a French Open tennis champion. Joakim Noah also has a wingspan of a 7'2" wingspan and a 37-inch vertical jump. And the fact that anyone would suggest that Joakim Noah, for instance, has a lack of talent simply does not understand science, does not understand basketball. And it's really interesting. This is obviously way before Joakim Noah is who he was today. He's referencing Joakim Noah in his prime when he was still on the Bulls. I'm going to read to you guys another couple of interesting passages that I found. This one. If you guys have ever wondered, for instance, why all the best or the majority of the best marathon runners in the world are all from Kenya, and not only that, they're not just not only are all the best marathon runners from Kenya, they're from a very particular part of Kenya. The 4.9 million Kalenjin, that's spelled Kalenjin, Kalenjin people, the 4.9 million Kalenjin represent about 12% of Kenya's population, but they take more than 3/4 of the country's top runners. And he goes into entire chapters where he talks about his time that he spent in Kenya, specifically with the Kalenjin people in the climate, and talking about how that environment produces most of the world's best endurance athletes. I'm going to read to you guys a couple other interesting stuff that I found here. What's this? Talking about wingspans. So he also talked about how water polo players have really long arms, and how swimmers in general, you guys probably know this if you just pay attention, but swimmers in general have very large upper torsos. If you look at Michael Phelps, his entire body, he is almost alien-like in how disproportional Michael Phelps, like just how disproportional his body is. Because his torso is so long, his shoulders are so wide, his legs are so short. And of course, if you can imagine, especially in a swimming, things like butterfly, that is a huge, huge advantage. I'm going to also read to you this part. One of the many failings of the NFL Combine that tests prospective draft picks and physical measurements is that arm length is not taken into account in the measurement of strength. Bench press is much easier for men with shorter arms, but longer arms are better for everything on the actual football field. So he's basically saying how you can't just take bench press numbers as an indictment of strength, or at least it's not translatable strength. Because it is true in football, and especially in basketball, longer arms is basically always better than short arms. All else being equal. And yeah, there's a lot of other interesting stuff. He has entire chapters talking about why men tend to be more dominant in sports than women in basically every athletic domain. and he goes into a lot of stuff. He talks about, you know, Y chromosome makes people taller. Men have about 80% more muscle mass in their upper body, 50% more in their legs, just naturally, even without training. It's really interesting stuff. He talks about like the early childhood stuff and how nutrition impacts things like this. He looks into historic examples. I just cannot recommend this book enough. If you're going to pick up one book about sports or even about basketball, just pick up this one. I mean, it changes your whole perspective. It's so well written and it's so engaging. And I've read this 2 times all the way through, and I'm going to read it a 3rd time through, because every time you read it, I remember new stuff that he talks about. So, The Sports Gene. Go check that out. Okay, I'm going to look at some questions. Hello, chicken butt. No. Opinions on trade war between U.S. and China? Yeah, I'm the wrong person to ask, man. I have no idea what's going on. Are you fans of any other sports besides basketball? I watch NFL. I pay attention to NFL. I mean, you know, I can name. I'm like probably like an average to maybe slightly above average NFL fan. I don't watch nearly as much football as I do basketball, and you know, I don't know nearly enough as much about it. I know very little NFL history, but I mean, especially when I was in high school, like senior year, we started playing fantasy football, and when you start playing fantasy football and you get really into it, you start watching football games, and you start paying attention to particular players and particular teams. I don't really play fantasy basketball or football anymore, but that's how initially I got into football. But I like it. Yeah, I really like football. And this might sound a little bit ridiculous for me to say, because after all, I do run this YouTube channel, and I spend so much time watching basketball and making these videos. But I actually enjoy often watching football more than I enjoy watching basketball. I'm just talking about the actual games themselves. Like, one of the things that initially drew me to American football was there's the level of teamwork that's involved in American football is not something you'd see in a lot of other sports. Like, one player can do very, very little in football. Everything relies on cooperation. Everything relies on communication. And often the creativity aspect is very intriguing to me as well. You know, I mean, I don't understand X's and O's of football as well as I do with basketball. I try. There's this guy on YouTube called Brett Coleman, I think is his name. He makes excellent X and O football videos. He's one of my favorite current channels. And I've learned a lot about football through him. But yeah, I mean, I really like football. I mean, you know, off the court, it's not comparable, right? Like off the court, NBA offseason and free agency, and the players and the individual brands and social media, NBA Twitter. I mean, all of that is so much better than NFL. But just watching the game itself, there are often times where I feel like football is more entertaining than basketball, even. So yeah, I do watch football. I don't really watch many other things. Do I think the Spurs will have a chance to be contenders with DeRozan? No, I don't think. Definitely not this season. And if DeRozan remains their best player, or if their 2 best players, if they're DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge, I mean, they're not going to win. You're not going to win a championship with DeRozan and LaMarcus as your 2 best players, unless you somehow round out the rest of the team with a bunch of borderline all-stars and the perfect role-playing team, which the Spurs don't. Spurs actually have some depth issues that are a little bit concerning because, they just have some depth issues. So I don't know. The Spurs might not even make the playoffs next year, man. You know, like there are 7 teams in the West that are basically guarantees for the playoffs, and the Spurs are not one of them. They're gonna have to fight with teams like the Kings and the Mavericks to get that last playoff spot in the West. There's nothing wrong with LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar. It's just if you have those 2 guys as your 2 best players, it's not a championship team, man. You know what I mean? Like, neither of them are all-stars in the West. I mean, like, when's the last time a team won the championship with no all-stars on their team? Okay, back to books a little bit. let's see what I want to talk about next. Oh, I'll talk about this. If I were to recommend a book to everyone, regardless of what they're interested in, regardless of whether or not they're basketball fans, regardless of where they're at, if they're students or they're working or they're retired, this one. This is one of the books that I can recommend to literally everyone. The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. This is essentially a book about procrastination. And I do not know anyone who does not procrastinate. Everyone I know, especially for me, everyone that I know struggles with procrastination, and everybody would like to procrastinate less. This is a book about that. It's written in very short chapters, so I feel like it's pretty digestible. You'll see that some chapters are only like a page long. And yeah, it's really cool. He basically talks about procrastination with a personification of the type. But if you struggle with that, or if you feel like you want something that is, a little bit motivational, also self-help that's not complete BS, read The War of Art. Okay, back to NBA questions. Yes, I understand that LaMarcus Aldridge was an all-star. I may have misremembered, but I think you still get my point, right? Like, he's very borderline all-star. Like, is LaMarcus Aldridge a top 25 player? Like, probably not, right? You could definitely name 25 players better. Have I read The Way of Kings? No, I have not read The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I'm gonna get to it eventually. The thing is, it's the same reason why I'm not reading the Game of Thrones books. It's just I have so many books on my reading list that I have so many completed series that I want to read that I'm going to read those first before I read any incomplete series. So from what I understand, with the Way of Kings series, Brandon Sanderson is going to write the first 5 books, and that's going to comprise of the part 1 of the 2 parts in the 10-book series. So after he finishes the 5th book, I think then I'm going to start reading the Way of Kings. I very recently finished his Mistborn books, which were pretty good, very imaginative, and I liked them. So yeah, it's on the list, but not anytime soon, man. Yeah, 10-book series. Yeah, his books are really long too. Although right now I'm currently reading The Wheel of Time, which is a series by Robert Jordan. That's 14 books long. In fact, if you guys want to see it, I'll show you guys what 14 books look like. Cool for me, I found a package on eBay. Let's see if I can show you guys. This is basically it. This is what 14 books looks like. Oh, Jesus. Hold on. Let's see. Let me flip this. Yeah, look at that. 14 books, man. Ready. I'm 3 books done, so my next book is going to be book 4, Shadow Rising. And each of these books, this book is like is almost 1,000 pages, isn't it? It's like 900 pages. Jesus. Yeah, these are a little bit sluggish to get through, but I figured I should eventually read them based on how popular they are, and based on the fact that there's going to be an Amazon Prime TV show made off of these books. So I would love to be one of those snobs, one of those Game of Thrones snobs that be like, oh man, well, I read the books, man, I'm so cool, Did you know that Ned Stark dies in season 1? One of those snobs. Okay, let me see. I can. Okay. I'm gonna read through some NBA stuff. Timberwolves' chances at the playoffs. Well, yeah, look, the Timberwolves are one of the teams that's gonna try and get that last eighth playoff spot. I don't give them much of a chance. If I had to bet today, I bet that they don't make it. Right? I have to put the Kings and the Spurs ahead of them in terms of power rankings, and by a pretty significant margin. So. Yeah, the Wolves are in a pretty messy situation, man. They locked themselves in with that 5-year Andrew Wiggins contract, and yeah, I don't know what they can do. No, I've never watched Naruto, so I don't get a lot of the Naruto references that I see online. I do remember that, like in it was like in elementary school, like people would whatever do this and stab you in the butt. I'm sure. I think a lot of people that happened to a lot of people in elementary school. But I remember like just boys doing that to each other. That's a Naruto reference, right? This thing isn't that the pose that they do when they go Super Saiyan or whatever it is. Yeah. Will J.R. Smith get signed to an NBA team? I think so. I think so. I think he can be like maybe a ninth man on a team. If anything, his shooting is still valuable in today's league, and I feel like if he tries, he can still be a passable defender. So yeah, I think J.R. Smith will be signed to a team. Sounds like he's not going to be on the Lakers, but players like J.R. Smith that are mostly off-ball shooters, he's going to be fine. He's probably going to make a team. Do I agree with Ben Taylor that Curry is better than KD? I don't really know how to answer questions like that. I mean, I'm not huge into rankings in general, like ranking players. I feel like you could definitely make an argument that Curry's better than KD. You could argue certainly that Curry at his very best was better than KD at his best. So Curry's 2016 season was better than KD's 2015. Yeah, 2015 or 2014 season. Whatever KD's MVP season was. I mean, it's like I've heard the arguments before. People say that Curry's more valuable to the Warriors than KD is, and the numbers reflect that, right? So the Warriors without Curry suffer a lot more than the Warriors do without KD. I don't know if that's a end-all be-all argument, but that's certainly a good argument in favor of Curry. But yeah. Okay, let's get back to another book. What else we got here? This is kind of weird. I recently read this. Kurt Vonnegut, Slaughterhouse-Five. Very dark humor. It's like a World War One, a World War II novel rather, with space, with like time travel in space, basically. It's like kind of weird. So if you're not into reading books in general, I don't recommend this. Even for me, it was like too weird, but I think still worth reading. Oh, I'm going to recommend this book, and this book I hope can actually help. I mean, there's 140 of you watching right now. If it can help one of you, I feel like it's worth recommending, but I recently recommended this. Now, get past the fact that this book is titled I Will Teach You to Be Rich. It sounds like a YouTube clickbait. It sounds like a shitty marketing tactic, which I think it kind of is, but this book is actually very informative, and I feel like it's well written. It's a finance book. And I feel like people don't really talk about finance in general. And I think maybe that's a big reason why Americans are in so much debt on average. But, even if you're a student in high school or college, even if you don't, even if you're not working yet or you don't make your own money yet, I think it's still worth reading just so you know what goes on. But it's a lot of very practical advice. And if you want like an intro to finance or personal finance books, I think this is a good intro. All right, I'm gonna do one more book recommendation. This is another self-helpy kind of book, but Deep Work by Cal Newport. I feel like this is really good. This is essentially a book about productivity and how to focus. If you find yourself struggling to work for extended periods of time, you always have trigger fingers. You always have to reach for your phone. You always got to check social media. I think this is a good book to look at to help you make tactics and habits out of how to focus better and how to study better, So Deep Work, Cal Newport, also recommend. Okay. Have I ever taken economics classes? Oh, Jesus. Sorry. Phone fell. I took I took elements of macroeconomics freshman fall, and I hated it. It just wasn't interesting to me, so I just never pursued it. I did briefly consider like doing an economics major or minor. But I mean, ultimately, I just wasn't interested in this stuff. It was too boring to me. So I chose psychology instead, which is so much more interesting than economics because I have stared at enough graphs for a lifetime. How long do I read every day? Well, at least an hour every day because I've been, for like the past year, I've basically pretty consistently done an hour of reading before bed every day. So it's a good wind down routine for me. You know, you shut off electronics, 10:30, 11 p.m., and then I read for an hour, and then go to bed. Helps me to sleep. So about an hour a day, often more. You know, like during the summer, I've had a lot more time to read, so I've been able to, for example, get through like a 300,000 word book in just a week, which I pretty much wouldn't be able to do during the school year. I try to read as much as I can, man. It's you know, I enjoy reading on average probably more than like TV shows and movies. Um, so yeah. I'm 20 years old. I'm 20 years old. I'm about to be a senior in college, and I'm graduating a semester early, which means that I have, well, school starts for me in about 2 weeks, and after that, I have about 3 months of school left, and then I'm graduated, man. I'm graduated, and then I'm free. I'm free to do stuff, and I'll be able to move. Probably, I go to school in Johns Hopkins, which is in Baltimore. So afterwards, definitely looking forward to moving out of Baltimore. Nothing against the city, it's just not for me. Oh, favorite NBA team. I don't have a favorite NBA team, man. I mean, yeah, I don't have a favorite NBA team. I used to. I think like when I was just getting into basketball, I just, you know, I like the Heat just because of Dwayne Wade. And that was my introduction to basketball. That was like, what, 2007? So the year after the Heat won the championship. And one of the first NBA games that I remember watching was the Christmas game, or one of the December games in 2007, Heat versus Lakers. And that was a game where Dwayne Wade, I think, scored 40 points and Kobe only scored 11. It was like one of Kobe's worst games. And I just remember watching that at a very young age and just seeing Kobe, the guy I kept hearing a lot about, just have this terrible game. And I saw Dwayne Wade completely outplay him. And so, you know, I mean, as a child, it's like those games imprint on you. So very early on, it was the Heat. And then, but then, you know, the deeper I got into basketball, the less I started to actually care about, a particular team because I found, you know, other teams just as interesting. And I started spending just as much time watching other teams as I did the Heat. But yeah, very early on it was the Heat, mostly because of Dwayne Wade. Am I going to focus on YouTube full time after I graduate? The short answer is yes, basically yes. My plan right now is that after college, I'm going to continue to do YouTube, and that's going to be my main source of income. It's a privilege. That's all I can say. And well, I mean, there's a couple of weeks ago when, you know, I was having like a conversation with my parents, and, you know, we're just talking about the future because I'm graduating in 4 months and it's going to be a big change in my life. And, you know, after I had the conversation, and they know what I'm doing with YouTube and stuff. And after I had that conversation, I literally, I think I was just like pacing back and forth in my room for like half an hour straight, just thinking about YouTube, man, and just thinking about this channel that I have, and, you know, the fact that I make a very modest amount of money from YouTube. It's basically like, you know, comparable to a salary you would get as an undergraduate coming out of college. Obviously, if I post more videos, that's naturally going to mean more money because that's more views and more AdSense dollars. But it's not a ton of money. But the benefit is that obviously I get to work for myself. I get to do something that I love. I mean, certainly I like making videos more than I would enjoy doing any sort of, you know, desk job or office job. anyways, I was just thinking about all that stuff, and it's one of those moments where I feel so lucky, and I mean, there's no better way to put it. I I almost feel like I didn't really deserve it because I just felt like it's like, I mean, not many people have the option to do this, to basically do this enough for full time living, and still have a ton of time. Because I mean, the good thing about YouTube is that it's not a ton of time if you look at it as a job. I mean, it's a very time consuming hobby, but it's a very pretty relaxing job. And yeah, and I feel really lucky. I feel like I started YouTube at just the right time. I started this a little more than 2 years ago, in basically in the summer of 2017. And right around then, I remember, when I first started, when I first even thought about doing YouTube, I was obviously looking at what's already out there. And at the time, there were not that many NBA commentary channels. There was Mike Korzemba was the biggest one. He was already really big at the time I started 2 years ago. Korzemba was already maybe 500,000 subscribers, maybe somewhere around that. And I think Dom2K was already making videos back then. Bezos, Legend of Winning, I remember. Andy Hoops had just started, and he was getting pretty big pretty fast. And that was it. I mean, there's less than 10 that I could name. And that was the time I started. And I felt like that was the perfect time for me to start, because there was already enough people watching NBA commentary, NBA videos on YouTube. So there was a proof of concept. I wasn't talking into the void. I knew that there were people out there like you guys who would be interested in NBA content. And but I also feel like it wasn't too late. I also feel like it wasn't very saturated. I feel like there were very few creators, and I feel like I could bring a lot of unique stuff into this community, and that was that. I mean, if I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys, if I were to start my NBA channel from scratch today in 2019, the summer of 2019, I don't think I would ever build the audience that I have today. I don't think my channel would be as successful. There's a lot of tiny stuff that's involved, man. I feel like I just hit the gold. I feel like I hit the gold rush period of NBA YouTube. There's so many other channels right now that it just got it feels so much more saturated, and it's so much harder to stand out. But yeah, anyways, I feel like so much of this is really due to luck. I mean, I know that I put the work in. I grinded through, my first couple months of making videos. It was like, I was spending 5 to 8 hours making the videos, and they would get less than 1,000 views. I mean, that's pretty demoralizing, but ultimately I just kept through it, and that part matters. But I would be a fool to not. I would be a fool to downplay the luck factor and the timing factor involved in all of this, because I mean that plays a huge role in success in almost any field, is timing, and just stuff that's out of your control. But yeah, how do I get on this topic? Oh, so yeah, somebody asked me what I was going to do after college. Yeah, I'm going to do YouTube, and the thing is, I don't really know what I want to do in general for my career, and in general for my life. I guess I don't really know. I know that it's not going to be YouTube. I mean, obviously I love doing this, and like I said, I much prefer doing this compared to any other sort of normal job that I would get. But I mean, I don't imagine myself doing this for more than a couple years. As much as I love the NBA, I have too many interests outside of basketball to make this my career. And yeah, so I'm just not sure yet. I just have too many random interests. I have, I mean, as I spend a lot of time reading. I'm a big bookworm. So this summer I started writing my own novel, and I very recently finished it. It's a big mess. It's 80,000 words, or 80 to 90,000 words. So it's a full-length novel, except it's so messy. It's a huge gigantic mess, but I still got through it, and that was a lot of fun for me. And so I'm planning to write another book series. And actually, I'll talk to you guys a little bit about the series, the book, I should say, that I'm planning out next. I haven't gone into writing around yet. I'm only in the world building and brainstorming stage first, but I think a lot of you guys will have read the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. It's a very popular, like, middle-aged young adult book series. That was one of my favorite books series growing up, was Percy Jackson. In fact, it was one of the things that got me into reading English books, just reading in English, after a long period in China where I wasn't really reading any English books. But the Percy Jackson series is a huge part of my childhood. Just, I love that series so much. And what I want to do for my next book is write about something that's a little bit similar. I mean, in the same way that Percy Jackson is inspired by Greek mythology, and it's about, like, what if the Greek gods were alive in our real time. I want to write about the Chinese version of that. I want to write about what if the monsters and the gods and the stories and the weapons and the armies from Chinese history and literature and mythology, what if they were real and in 2019, and what if they, for whatever reason, came to America, just started killing little American kids. I don't know. It's just random stuff like that, man. And I read a lot of Chinese literature growing up. Sangui Yan, like Three Kingdoms, Journey to the West, a lot of stuff like that. And there's a lot of good stuff to pull from there. And Chinese mythology is very scattered, and Chinese mythology is very varied. So it's like it's harder to piece together than Greek mythology is, and it'll obviously be very different just because it's completely different than Greek mythology. First of all, because there's no gods, but yeah, I want to do that, and that's a series I'm planning right now. So what I'm doing is basically I'm reading through a lot of Chinese mythology, and I'm reading through a lot of Chinese literature. I'm reading some Chinese history. Some of it's just refreshment, but I want to see if I can maybe write the next Percy Jackson series, or at least something that's inspired by that. So that's what I'm planning. It'll probably take me the rest of this year to brainstorm ideas for that. But yep, that's a little insight into what I'm doing. So yeah, that's another interest of mine that I don't really know if I want to do. To be a full-time writer is like, I think I would enjoy that as a career, but it's also one of those jobs where you don't make any money beginning out, right? I mean, like, most successful authors don't get their first big book until they're like in their late 30s or 40s. And so you got to be realistic about these things. It's kind of like stand-up comedy, another thing that I have some interest in. It's like most stand-up comedians don't really become popular until they're in their 30s or 40s. You see almost nobody in their 20s that make it as a stand-up comedian. It's just unheard of. Almost everybody has to put in about 10 years of hard work and building connections and stuff like that, to the point, perfecting their craft to the point where they can make a living off of it even. And even then, whenever you're dealing with stuff like entertainment or art, you have the top 1% of the people that are raking in like 90% of the money and 90% of the fame. So the majority of people who pursue it, even the majority of people who make a living from it, aren't famous or aren't successful by traditional definitions. So I think about this stuff a lot, man, mostly because, like, for me personally, I just don't have a very clear career path in front of me, right? Like, I'm the exact opposite of a pre-med student. This is especially, what would you say? This is especially contrasting. This is especially obvious to me because I go to Johns Hopkins. And Johns Hopkins, if you don't know anything about the university, this is a university that is mostly known for its medical schools. And so even its undergraduate program here is littered with pre-med students. My estimation is that half of the students at my university are pre-med, which means they want to become doctors one day, or if not doctors, then physicians, something in the medical field, something that would require them to go to medical school. And it's, for them, like pre-med, it's a very set track, right? They know exactly what they're going to do. Like maybe they might choose to take a gap year, choose to work for a year, but they know they're going to go to med school. They know how long that's going to take. They know they're going to go to residency, and then they know, 10 years or more than that from now, they're going to finally become a doctor, and they're going to have a very stable job, because no matter what the future holds, no matter what happens to economies, doctors are always needed, and it's a very safe job in that sense. It's one of the rather safer jobs. Of course, it's grueling. I mean, it sucks, right? Being a pre-med student, you have to study so much, and it's so competitive. But it's a very straightforward career path. But with me, it's like, I'm the complete opposite. I have no straight career path, right? I'm majoring in psychology, but I'm not going to be a therapist. I'm not really interested in psychiatry or anything like that. I'm not going to be a researcher. God knows I don't want to spend my days in a lab or doing social experiments. But for me, it's like I could go a bunch of different ways, and because of YouTube, I have the flexibility to pursue those interests on the side while I make a living from making YouTube videos. But yeah, I mean, it can still be challenging, especially when a lot of your friends or the people around you seem to know what they're doing in life, and you're the only one who doesn't. You know what I mean? And this is stuff. This worried me a lot more like last year when I was last summer. But yeah, so I don't know if any of you guys out there are equally unsure of what you're going to do in the future. Well, I mean, know that you're not alone. Even for the majority of people, unless they're on some sort of graduate school or pre-med, pre-law track, most people, even if they think they know what they're going to do, it's almost a guarantee that they'll end up changing industries. I mean, there's very few people who go into work straight out of college and just stay in the same industry for their entire lives. It's very, very rare. So yeah, I would say don't worry too much about that if you're stressed about that, because I know that can be stressful. Why limit my YouTube channel to just basketball? Why limit to just basketball? Well, that's a good question. Well, I mean, I think, the majority of people subscribe to my channel because of basketball, and I'd like to keep it about basketball. I feel like I know how to make basketball videos better than any other sort of videos. I mean, I have ideas about making a second channel. I tried doing that earlier this calendar year in 2019, but I wanted to be like a comedy skit channel, but eventually I ran out of ideas, and I figured I didn't really enjoy making those videos. So I stopped doing that. I am open to the future and making other videos. I've even thought about making a second YouTube channel where I just talk about books, believe it or not. I mean, talk about content that's impossible to clickbait. Try making videos about books. But I'm open to it in the future. But this channel will always stay NBA, man. I mean, I know somebody brought up the example of KSI, how he started off making soccer, FIFA videos, and he now has turned into a general YouTuber. I mean, first of all, if I end up at like KSI and I make all these like drama videos and I become just essentially like an internet douchebag, I'm gonna hate myself. So I don't want to become that. But even so, it's like, I feel like if that's gonna happen, I'm gonna do it on a separate channel. This bad channel is gonna stay basketball. Yeah, huh? Yeah, I should start some drama with another NBA YouTuber. They do that in a lot of other communities. For some reason, the sports commentary community in general is pretty drama free, at least in the YouTube space. So maybe I should start some beef. Yeah, the thing is, I mean, the big barrier for me is not actually my conscience. I if it would actually work, I would probably do it. The only thing is that I personally don't care enough about sports or basketball to really take things that seriously. So I feel like if any beef in NBA community, in the NBA commentary community would happen, I mean, it'd be over what? Like people just disagreeing over who's better than who. So it's like, for me, it's like I just don't care that much. Like, I mean, I think that Andre Drummond's overrated, but if you tell me that you think Andre Drummond's underrated, I'll be like, okay, cool. Have a nice day. It's like, it doesn't bother me that people some people think Andre Drummond's a good NBA player, whereas I don't think he is. It's whatever. I mean, it's sports, it's entertainment, and like this stuff doesn't matter, you know. Um, yeah. Any tips for a basketball YouTuber starting out? Well, I would say a couple things. I would say focus on making the best videos that you can. You can get sucked into a lot of just, making sure, how do I make my thumbnails more attractive? How do I title my videos properly? Do I got the right tags? Should I, ask bigger YouTubers to share it? And not to say that that stuff doesn't matter, but what ultimately comes down to it is your video content. If you make good videos, well, I should say this: if you don't make good videos, you're just never going to succeed. And I would also say that, you have to think about why you're making videos in the first place, right? You have to think about, okay, is this something I actually enjoy doing? Because eventually you're going to hit burnout stage. Eventually you're going to reach a point where you don't want to make videos anymore, where you're out of ideas, where it's not as interesting anymore. And at that point, what's going to get you through is how much you actually enjoy this thing. It's so that's what I would say. Focus on making the best YouTube content you can. It's becoming increasingly more difficult because the space has grown so much in the past 2 years that I've been on it. But try to see what type of content you want to see that people aren't making. Don't make try not to make the same type of videos that other people are making. Try not to make, all the videos that you see in your sub box of like, like the, I don't know, top 10 NBA duos. It's like, okay, if people are already doing that, then do you really think you can stand out with that sort of content? So that's what I would say. Stay true to yourself, focus on making the best content available, and that will eventually get you to where you need, if it's possible. And I would also say, don't put all of your ego and self-esteem into it. I mean, this goes for, I guess, a lot of things in life, but especially with YouTube. I mean, dude, there's so much luck. There's so many things that are out of your control, that there's so many great people who make great videos that just never get any sort of views. And again, I mean, this harkens back to what I was talking about earlier, but I feel like I got lucky in a big sense. And so what I would say is that if you enjoy doing it, just go ahead and enjoy doing it and focus on making content. If that makes you happy, then that makes you happy. But also understand that, there's no guarantee that you'll make it. And that might sound a little bit pessimistic, but I think it's something that is true. It's like, I think that there are a lot of writers, for instance, that would be happy if they never once published none of their books ever reached a bestseller list, but they can still die happy knowing that, even in their closet, they have 80 novels, none of them which are popular, but they feel proud of. And so I feel like with YouTube, you need to adopt a similar kind of mindset. So I hope that helps, man. Oh, my throat's getting really dry. Speaking of YouTube, right now it's very difficult to make NBA content, man. I mean, you guys probably know, but there's been no NBA news basically in the past 3 weeks. So, bit of a video drought for, I'm guessing, a lot of YouTubers around. We're all squeezing out, just struggling to squeeze out video ideas. It's really difficult. Where do I place the Pistons in the East? Well, probably like somewhere 6th to 8th in the East, right? Philly, Milwaukee, Boston, Indiana. Those are the top 4 in the East. And then at this point, I think the Pistons are probably in the same tier as like the Heat, the Orlando Magic, the Brooklyn Nets. I think the Brooklyn Nets can maybe squeeze into the top 4 in the East, but I mean those 5 teams, right? The Nets, the Celtics, the Sixers, the Bucks, and the Pacers. Those are the top 5 in the East. I think. And so the Pistons, 6 through 8, somewhere in there. Yeah. Does the Boogie injury greatly affect the Lakers' chances, in your opinion? Yeah, I talked about this very early on in the live stream, but it's like I don't really think so, because I think the Lakers are actually quite fine with DeMarcus Cousins. Even when they signed them, I thought they don't actually really need him. You know what I mean? Because, again, between Anthony Davis and JaVale McGee, they have 48 minutes of center time they can split. JaVale McGee could easily play 25 minutes per game. That's a nice number for him. He plays 25 minutes per game. Anthony Davis is probably going to play low 30s minutes per game. He spends maybe 20, 2/3 of that time at center. Well, there you have your 48 minutes at the center position. I mean, they can get by just fine without Boogie. It just sucks for Boogie personally, because it felt like he was trying to, go to a playoff team and try to make a difference, but injuries, man. Any psychology book recommendations? Great point. Let me see if I can find any psych books. Oh, yeah. Well, I would recommend this one. This is not, I don't know what's wrong with the book cover, but Happiness Hypothesis, written by Jonathan Haidt, who's a psych professor at Harvard. And this is really cool, man. It's Psychology of Happiness, and he gives a lot of very cool research in here. I mean, brain studies, statistical research, little tidbits on how to be, just 1% happier in life. I think this is a really good one. Oops. What made you major in psych if you're not going to pursue a career with it? Is it just pure interest? Yes, it is just pure interest. Yeah, it is just interest. It's the major that I found most interesting. And now, if I were to start college again with the knowledge I have now, which is not a realistic thought experiment, but stick with me here. If I were to start college again, and if I were to be able to just switch majors, which is just not possible for me anymore because I'm about to complete my major. But if I had the ability to start new, maybe I would choose the major in history instead, because I find that often more interesting than psychology. So probably history, or maybe because I have a recent discovery of my love for writing, maybe I could be a writing seminars minor. Excuse me, or even an English minor. So, yeah, but no, I majored in psychology just because of the interest moment. Oh, Breaking Bad question. I should talk more about Breaking Bad since I titled this video Breaking Bad too, huh? Best moment in Breaking Bad. That's so hard to pick, man. I would say the Heisenberg's "Say My Name" moment in the last season, where he tells that guy to say my name. That was one of the moments that gave you chills. The ending to season 4, where Gus Fring, he kills Gus Fring, but then at the very end of that season, you see the camera pan towards Walt, and you see the camera slowly pan towards the Lily of the Valley, and you realize that Walt was the one that poisoned the kid, and realize that Walt had engineered this entire thing from the very beginning. That was an all-time moment. So yeah, that's probably one. Scrolling up a little bit. Questions. How do you identify politically? I identify politically as non-binary. What's the best TV show out right now? I don't watch a lot of TV shows, man. I mean, yeah, I'd be able to tell you more about books, but Better Call Saul. I recently finished season 4 of Better Call Saul, and season 5 is about to come out. So, yeah, Better Call Saul is still ongoing. That's probably one of the best shows, man. Yeah, it's awesome. It's sometimes hard it feels so independent. Like, if it's so, I mean, Jimmy McGill feels so different from Saul Goodman that it's just, yeah, I feel like it's awesome. I have not watched Stranger Things. That is definitely on my list. And in fact, because of I've already been asked that so many times during this live stream, I should probably start watching it pretty soon. How do you deal with bad breakups at a psychology level? Well, I've never had a bad break. I've never had a real breakup, much less a bad breakup. I've never really been in a serious relationship. The closest I've gotten, I was with a girl for like 2 weeks. That's the closest. That's like the longest I've gotten, which says something, I guess. But so I'm definitely the wrong person to ask. I mean, how do you deal on a psychological level? I have no idea, man. I feel like people have their own ways of dealing with stuff like that. I don't know how I would react. I feel like, I mean, yeah, it's just that's hard for me to answer, especially because I have never been through it. But that's one of those things where everybody has their own way of dealing with stuff like that. There's probably good and bad ways. I think one thing that social psychology has made very clear is that people with strong social networks and people with strong friend groups and connections tend to handle trauma a lot better. That's a big statistical finding. I mean, they've done a lot of these survey type or even experimental designs where you basically ask people like, how many people do you feel comfortable calling about a tragedy, or how many people, do you see on a regular basis, blah, blah, blah. And those with a stronger social network deal the best with sudden, dramatic, negative events. And they do better with positive events, right? A big underrated part about social relationships, and you learn this in social psychology, is that being able to share good news with someone is sometimes more important than being able to share bad news. So when we think of, for example, what constitutes a good friend, we often think, okay, well, this is a friend that I feel like I can talk to about my innermost secrets, that I feel like I can be vulnerable with, that I feel like I can talk to about my trauma or about any negative things that I experience. What's equally or sometimes more important, psychologists have found, is the friends that you go to when something good happens to you, and the friends that are able to be sincerely happy for you. Those are often an even bigger indicator of someone who you have a really good and strong relationship with. And yeah, so I would say that's that. Avengers Endgame or Far From Home? I mean, it's got to be Endgame for me. I saw Far From Home pretty recently. It was, yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, it's like, I feel like Far From Home, what it does well for me is it captures the teenage high school angst really well. Like the actors, Peter Parker and MJ and Ned and a lot of the high schoolers, they're all super awkward. And I like that because I think a lot of times you see in TV shows and movies, like high schoolers are acting like college students. They seem too mature, they seem too confident. Whereas in high school, I mean, as far as my experience, it's like most people are really, really awkward in high school in general. So I feel like they did that in Far From Home really, really well. Yeah, I thought it was a fine movie, but I mean, Endgame is awesome. Do I believe that Walter White is still alive? No, I don't believe that Walter White is still alive. No, I feel like it's pretty obvious that he died at the end. I mean, it's not as clear cut. I mean, that's about as clear cut as you can be without like having a last scene of like Walter's funeral. I mean, come on, like the guy was bleeding to death on the floor. The last shot was of him, with no breath in his chest, just gazing up lifelessly at the ceiling. Come on. Iverson, Kidd, or Nash? Well, I think Iverson is not on. Well, yeah, I'll say. I mean, I think it's for me. It's definitely between Kidd or Nash. I wouldn't consider Iverson to build a team around, just because I think you can win a championship with Nash, with Prime Nash or Prime Kidd as your best player. I actually do not think you can win a championship with Iverson as your best player. With a caveat that your second best player would have to be really, really good. But I mean, for me, if I were a GM, even in the early 2000s, I would much rather have Kidd or Nash. I mean, that's tough, man. Nash is probably easier to build a team around. Kid is a little bit harder, but I think Kid probably has a bigger ceiling. If you have Kid as your best player, you have and you get the right pieces around him, you can build a team with a higher ceiling than you can with Nash. With Nash, there are limits to how good you can be, especially defensively. So probably Jason Kidd for me. What is the biggest difference between here and China? Wow, biggest difference between U.S. and China. I was asked this question a lot when I was in China, when I go back to China by Chinese people. What I usually tell them is that a lot of stuff is similar. I would say there are different social norms in China with how you interact with strangers and how you just greet people in general. In China, there's not really a social fabric that exists in America and other Western countries. So, I mean, what you tend to see in China is like, strangers tend to be less friendly, less ready to help. It's people are a little more standoffish. It depends a lot on also where you live. China's a big place, man. It's just as big as the U.S. And so, if you live in Shanghai, you could it basically feels the same as if you were living in America or living in Europe, and you see a lot of foreigners in Shanghai. But if you were to live in, like the places where my mom and dad come from, where it's like, second tier cities, third tier cities, or even villages, in the case of my dad, then I mean that is like a completely different China. So yeah, I would say a lot of stuff is actually quite similar, but there's just a lot of little stuff here and there that's very different that takes time getting used to. But yeah, if you want to know, the best thing to do is always to travel to China yourself. Do I play any video games? Do I play any video games? I do not really play any video games. I mean, currently I play Stardew Valley on Nintendo Switch. Just it's for like an indie farming game, just to relax. I used to play League of Legends a long time ago, freshman year of high school. So that would be 7 years ago. 7 years ago was the last time I played League of Legends, and I got really into that game. Went from level 1 to level 30, and I even got into ranked in League of Legends. I quit cold turkey after freshman year because it ruined my life. I had a legitimate gaming addiction. Like it's like not a joke. It was about as serious as I think you can get with a gaming addiction. It was like I couldn't sleep because I was thinking about the game. I would wake up early to play the game. It was terrible. It was the worst year of my life was freshman year of high school for me. And I realized I had to cut it cold turkey. But I also realized that it wasn't necessarily like the root of my problems, I would say. For me, it was probably more of a symptom. Freshman year of high school was tough for me in general because I had gone to middle school and gone to most of elementary in China, and so when I came to America for boarding high school nonetheless, it was a big adjustment for me. Like I felt pretty out of tune with American culture. It also didn't help that there weren't a lot of international students at the school where I went, and so I just felt really ostracized socially. My grades weren't very good because it turned out that especially English classes were a lot harder for me than I realized. Like my essay writing ability at that time was basically that of like a 6th grade level, whereas I was supposed to be at a high school level. So yeah, and then I think it's like at moments like that where you turn to stuff like gaming, because gaming gives you a sense of accomplishment. It's a big dopamine hit. It makes you feel like you're doing something. It makes you feel like you're part of something. It gives you status, and so that's why I turned to gaming and why I got so addicted. And I did have to cut cold turkey, and I haven't played any League since then. Actually, a couple weeks ago, I was visiting an old high school friend, and together we actually went on YouTube and we watched the most recent League of Legends World Championships, and I didn't even recognize the game. It looks so different because the last time I played League of Legends was 7 years ago. So, yeah. But no, I mean, I know I still play games, and I'll still play games in the future. Oh, I'm really looking forward to Pokemon Sword and Shield, which is coming out mid-November, and I'm going to dump a lot of hours into that game. And I'm already planning it, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it because I know it's going to be worth my time. Because I played a lot of Pokemon growing up. I start off with Emerald Green on my Game Boy Advance, and then I also played Diamond and Pearl and Black and White on my Nintendo, which I no longer have. My Nintendo 3DS is what you call it. Any hot takes on Game of Thrones? Well, I mean, the last season was pretty bad. I don't think there was any way they could have made the last season good because they needed more seasons. They couldn't do it in only what 6 episodes. I mean, that's ridiculous. Even if the episodes are an hour long, I mean, it's ridiculous. They needed at least 3 more seasons to properly finish that show. I mean, so yeah, I feel like they just clearly rushed things together, but the first the first 6 seasons I think are all excellent. Even the sixth season, which already went beyond the books, I think even the sixth season was awesome. But oh sorry, season 7 and season 8 were just Jesus, a train wreck, total train wreck. So yeah, I don't know if I will have really a lot of hot takes. I actually thought before season 8 started, I thought that Sansa Stark was going to end up on a throne. That was my prediction. I got kind of close. I mean, Sansa Stark ended up queen of the North. But I actually thought she was going to win the throne. Because I felt like she was actually one of the few women with enough ambition to get to make a play for the throne. Oh yeah, about the Harden Westbrook duo. Yeah, I have answered that question before, but I'll talk a little bit about that. I mean, I'm really interested to see what happens. I think that the fit is obviously very questionable, and it's going to take adjusting from both Harden and Westbrook. But I think one of the undeniable benefits of having Westbrook on the team compared to Chris Paul is that during the regular season, James Harden's going to have to play less minutes, and he's going to have to play less games. It's going to give him more rest, and that's going to make him better for the playoffs because you do tend to see James Harden run out of gas in the later rounds of playoffs. And some of that does have to do with the wear and tear that he goes through in the regular season because he's plays so many minutes and he plays almost every game of the season. Yeah, I think that is an undeniable advantage. Just having Westbrook be able to at least carry the offense or be the primary creator on offense when Harden is not on the floor, that is very valuable. And also because Westbrook doesn't miss nearly as much, it's not expected to miss 20 games like Chris Paul is. So that's a big thing too. Oh. Did I apply to Johns Hopkins as an international student? No, I did not, because I went to high school in America. I went to a boarding high school. Now, I applied to high school as an international student, but I think the way every college works is that they just look at where you went to high school. So if you went to high school in the U.S., you're not considered an international student. Do I think Zion will be a bust? It's obviously too early to tell. I'm definitely more concerned about Zion than other people seem to be. I recently watched B-Ball Breakdown, Coach Nick's video of Zion Williamson, and Coach Nick basically thinks that Zion is already better than Julius Randle, which I don't see at all. Yeah, man. I mean, look, it's like, first of all, Zion can't shoot. And based on his shooting form, he's going to need a total revamp to even become an average shooter, if he ever becomes that. And so you think, okay, NBA superstars that can't shoot, that are not centers, who are those guys? Giannis, Ben Simmons, right? And so you compare Zion Williamson to Giannis, for an example. might argue with me. You might argue and say that Zion is just as athletic as Giannis, and I would say no. I think that what makes Giannis special. First of all, Giannis is much longer. Giannis is 7 feet tall, and maybe Zion grows, but it doesn't seem like he already looks like he's 30 years old. Whereas Giannis looked like a teenager when he came into the league. But Giannis is 7 feet. He has crazy wingspan, very lean, and super long strides. Zion Williamson feels like much like a power player to me, and I mean it's just questionable. Like in today's league, what is Zion Williamson? Is he a small ball center? I mean, is he a forward that can't shoot? Is he what is he? Is Zion Williamson like Kenneth Faried with handles? I mean, what is he? Is he like what is he? I don't know what his role is. So I just feel like Zion Williamson is going to need a lot more work than people think, and especially with the photos of him being very out of shape. And I say that I should emphasize when that might sound like I think he's out of shape in the everyday life sort of sense. No, I mean, look, if he were like a random dude, Zion Williamson would be ripped. But for basketball, there's a very particular type of shape that basketball players have to get into. You know, Zion Williamson might look really ripped with all those photos of him, you know, with having 270 pounds on his body, but in basketball, you don't want that much weight on you. You want to get leaner, especially in today's league. That's why every superstar you see has been cutting their weight, including guys like LeBron. I mean, LeBron, if you remember, LeBron in Miami was 260 easily. He was a power player. I mean, he was he bullied dudes in the post. But now, I mean, LeBron probably looks like he weighs 230 maybe. He cut down a lot of that weight because it's just in today's league, you want speed more than strength. And so for an NBA player, Zion's not in great shape. He needs to cut down a lot of that weight. And that's something that I don't think people are paying enough attention to. I think often you just see a shirtless photo of Zion, you're like, oh my God, this dude's huge. He looks like he could beat me up. That must mean he's in good shape. He's not in good shape, man. Not for NBA. If he is to be what he is, he has to cut down. Kenneth Faried with handles should be the title of my next video. Yeah, Kenneth Faried with handles. I feel bad for Kenneth Faried, man. He kind of, you know, I mean, he's still in the NBA. I think he's still on the Rockets, right? But man, there was that one year when he was on the Nuggets, when he was the Manimal, and he was exciting. That was the year when Andre Iguodala was still on the Nuggets, and they made the playoffs. And they lost to the Warriors. That was like the first year that the Warriors made a big splash in the playoffs. But that was a fun team, man. That was, you know, Andre Iguodala, Andre Miller, Ty Lawson. Remember that guy, Ty Lawson? Kenneth Faried. Yeah, man, that was a fun team. That was like the time when I got really into basketball. So I have a very distinct memory of watching them in the playoffs. Oh my God, I'm exhausted. Thoughts on Bam Adebayo? I think he is probably underrated by casual NBA fans and probably overrated by hardcore fans. I feel like a lot of Heat fans especially are placing too many expectations on Bam Adebayo. To me, he doesn't have that high of a ceiling. I don't really see him ever becoming even close to an all-star level player. To me, I feel like he's definitely starter quality material, and his ceiling in terms of production is maybe like Steven Adams, which is still a close to max player, if not a max player, but he's just not, you know, I mean, you can't really build a team around that guy, right? He doesn't have the skill set. He's never going to be a shot creator or anything like that. And so he can be good. He's already pretty good. And again, underrated by casual fans who don't really watch many Miami Heat games, but you know, I think that's what he is. Okay, I'm gonna take one more question because my throat is actually killing me. Draymond is going to be playing a lot as a result of his injuries. So for the new contract, yeah, Draymond's new contract. I guess I'll just talk about his contract. It's what, 4 years, 80 million? No, 4 years, 100 million. Which one was it? Was it 4 years, 100 million? I think so. Yeah, it feels like fair money to me. I mean, I tend to have a lower opinion of Draymond than most people do, but 4 years, 100 million, I feel like was pretty fair. I mean, he's not going to get better than what he is. In fact, you could argue that his best year was the 2017 season or 2016 season. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say. I mean, feels like understandable money. I guess you are a little bit concerned about motivation. I mean, when you offer an extension like that, you're concerned about whether or not he's just going to relax. But Draymond also doesn't really seem like the type of guy to relax. So, yeah. There's a question written in Chinese. Yeah, have I ever met Jeremy Lin in real life? No, I've never met Jeremy Lin in real life. Never had the honor. I would love to. He seems like a cool guy, honestly. He seems like just a cool guy off the court, I know people who've met him. I know people from my days when I was at an internship at a Tencent Sports, which is a Chinese media company, and I know people who work at Tencent who have met Jeremy Lin when he's come to China during the summer usually. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think I'm gonna end the stream here, man. I've been streaming for almost 100 minutes, 95 minutes here, an hour and a half. So, wow, it's quite exhausting. My throat's hurting. But this was a lot of fun, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. And I'll try to see if I can maybe do these on a 1 week basis, bi-weekly basis. Who knows? And I hope I didn't bore you guys too much with a bunch of the non-basketball stuff. But I feel like, especially with a live stream, it's kind of cool to mix in a little bit basketball with a little bit of my other interests, and maybe tell you guys. Maybe in the future, what I'll do is I'll tell you guys some stories, maybe from maybe my days in high school or some of my experiences in college, because I know a lot of you guys, the majority of you guys, are either in high school or in college. So I feel like it's probably it'd be a good thing to talk about. So looking forward to that. If I didn't get to your question for whatever reason, feel free to contact me on social media, Twitter or Instagram. You can hit me up and just DM me the question. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay? Okay. Thank you guys for watching. I'm exiting out. Peace.